Hey GLS fam! Loving the content? Help keep the good vibes flowing by subscribing. Or, if you're feeling extra awesome, send a super thanks. Or buy me a coffee using the link below. Your support means the world to me, and every bit helps me create more of the stories you love. Thank you for being amazing, and stay tuned for even more goodness coming your way soon. Love you always. Chapter 15. Back to present. Ji-hyun stood there, smiling softly, as if calling her had always felt natural. Without warning, Ji-hyun pulled her into a warm hug, cheerful and unguarded. She laughed brightly, announcing that her parents were waiting, while the teacher stood stiff in surprise, her thoughts scrambling to catch up. Hand in hand, Ji-hyun burst into the room with excitement. She proudly declared that she had finally brought her girlfriend home, revealing, with innocent boldness, that the woman beside her was also her teacher. The words landed heavily, and silence filled the space. Ji-hyun's parents observed everything closely. One hid behind a calm smile, the other behind thoughtful silence. The teacher felt her chest tighten, forcing a polite smile as unease crept in. Sensing the tension, Ji-hyun gently defended her, asking her parents not to scare her away. The mood slowly softened when they revealed they already knew her from school meetings and were simply teasing. When asked her age, she answered honestly, her voice steady despite her nerves. The parents exchanged a glance, then spoke with surprising warmth. Ji-hyun was old enough to choose for herself, they said, and they had no objections to the two of them dating. Relief washed over her, quiet and overwhelming. From the side, Ji-hyun watched her with open admiration, her affection impossible to hide. In that moment, amid lingering nerves and gentle smiles, their bond felt seen, accepted, and just a little stronger than before. Top of form. The room grew quiet after they returned home. Ji-hyun sat close to her, watching her with gentle curiosity while the older woman lowered her head, cheeks faintly flushed. Later, as fruit was set aside, a worry slipped out. She admitted that many younger girls admired Ji-hyun at school, and the thought unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. A soft fear followed. One day, Ji-hyun might grow tired of her. The words lingered. Ji-hyun sensed the change immediately and asked why she would say such a thing. When there was no answer, she moved closer, wrapping an arm around her waist, grounding her with warmth. She denied the fear without hesitation. It wasn't looks that mattered, she said gently, nor age. What she felt ran deeper than that. Then, with a quiet certainty, Ji-hyun leaned in and whispered her promise. They would grow older together. The tension eased. In that small, intimate moment, reassurance replaced doubt, and their connection settled into something calm, steady, and undeniably mutual. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she asked if the teacher truly understood how much she liked her. The closeness between them left no room for doubt, only a quiet intensity that made the air feel heavy. The teacher hesitated, reminding her that her parents were still nearby. Ji-hyun answered with calm confidence, brushing the worry aside, telling her that they won't hear them because their hotel is soundproof. At Aaron's place, her name echoed in the room, breaking the fragile calm. The sound alone was enough to make her hand tremble. The pencil snapped in two, a sharp crack that revealed how tightly Aaron had been holding everything in. Jisoo sat frozen beside her friend, eyes lowered, whispering that the girl she admired was strong enough to leave her behind. The thought hurt more than she expected. A quiet question followed, cutting through the silence. The truth surfaced at last. The name she had been trying to hide slipped out, carried by unfinished thoughts and careless murmurs. Realization dawned slowly. It had always been Ji-hyun. When confronted, she could only stare back, caught between surprise and guilt. There was no anger in the air, only a soft ache and an unspoken understanding. Nothing else needed to be said. The feelings were finally visible, fragile and honest, lingering between them as the moment settled into silence. Bottom of form. Jisoo finally asked if it is Kwang Ji-hyun who she like. The truth came out without warning. When Erin asked who had told her, her answer was simple. She had said the name herself, murmuring it over and over, along with the quiet confession that the birthday would be spent with someone else, not her. The next question was hesitant but heavy. Was she being betrayed? The reply came after a pause, soft and uncertain. They were not girlfriends. Silence followed, stretching between them. Then she spoke again, her voice steady despite the ache beneath it. If there was no one tying her down, then she would take the chance. Jisoo asked her to have date with her. She asked her out plainly, offering herself without games or pressure. She promised only one thing, to help her forget about Ji-hyun. Across the table, their eyes met. In that moment, doubt gave way to a fragile possibility, and the space between them filled with quiet, undeniable tension. Chapter 16. Erin pushed Jisoo's wheelchair as Jisoo yelled with excitement. Erin frowned and told her to lower her voice and not cause embarrassment. Jisoo turned her head to look at Erin and said she was just excited about their date. Her smile slowly faded when she remembered that Erin only agreed to come because of Ji-hyun. Erin continued pushing the wheelchair in silence while Jisoo secretly admired her. They stopped in front of a river. Jisoo suddenly shouted that this was the cursed river, then froze. Erin was a bit annoyed. Erin stood beside Jisoo's wheelchair as they both looked at the water. Jisoo asked Erin if could just hold on. Erin helped Jisoo onto a nearby bench. After a moment, Jisoo quietly asked how long Erin had liked Ji-hyun. Erin answered coldly that it was none of her business. Jisoo said she thought Erin wanted to move on. Erin hesitated, then admitted it had been 2 years. Jisoo asked if she had ever confessed. Erin looked away and said there was no point. Ji-hyun didn't like her. Silence fell between them. Then Jisoo spoke again, saying that Erin only gave up because it wasn't mutual, and reminded her that Jisoo liked her. Suddenly, Jisoo grabbed Erin's wrist and pulled her down onto her lap. Erin froze, shocked and confused. Jisoo asked softly if she was uncomfortable being held like that. Erin raised an eyebrow and asked if Jisoo wanted to push her away. Jisoo didn't answer. They only stared at each other. Jisoo tightened her arms around Erin's waist and told her to give love a chance, that next time she fell in love, she should show it. Erin said it might ruin their friendship. Jisoo replied that she didn't know how many steps it took to go from friends to lovers, and that anyone who rejected Erin didn't know how precious she was. Erin looked at Jisoo, deeply touched. Their faces were only inches apart. Jisoo teased her, saying she looked moved. Erin got flustered, pushed Jisoo's hands away, and stood up. Jisoo asked where she was going. Erin answered coldly that she was going to the bathroom. Jisoo watched her walk away and told her she would wait. Meanwhile, as Erin walked alone, she placed a hand on her chest. She felt her heart was racing. Chapter 17. Jisoo smiled to herself, thinking that Erin was slowly opening up to her. She also realized that Erin was only yearning for a mother's love. Resting on Jisoo's lap was a small card. She thought that if she didn't mess things up with Erin, maybe things between them would slowly get better. Jisoo hesitated, wondering if Erin would accept the card. Before she could finish her thoughts, the card suddenly slipped from her hand and was carried away by the wind. Jisoo gasped and tried to grab it, leaning forward too far from her. She rolled her wheelchair after the paper, trying to chase it. Then she stopped. Her expression fell. Suddenly, her wheelchair slipped near the stairs. Jisoo froze, unable to move. The wheelchair tipped forward, and Jisoo was thrown into the river. She hit the water hard. Jisoo tried to call for help, but no sound came out. She struggled to swim because her injured legs wouldn't move. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Erin stood in front of the sink, lost in deep thought, thinking of Ji-hyun, who she likes. Erin was wondering why her heart still felt disturbed. Shaking her head, she decided to go back. When Erin returned, she looked around and froze, thinking where would Jisoo go. Then she heard someone shouting. Erin looks toward the sound. She stood there, stunned, her breath caught in her throat when she saw a blonde woman kneeling by the river, trying to perform CPR on Jisoo. The girl desperately continues to perform a CPR on Jisoo. The woman continued pressing on Jisoo's chest again and again, panic clear on her face. Then, suddenly, Jisoo coughed. Water spilled from her mouth as she turned to the side, gasping for air. The blonde woman let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. She whispered a quiet thanks, grateful that Jisoo was alive. The woman looked down at Jisoo, checking her. Slowly, she turned her head when she heard Aaron's voice asking what had happened. The moment Aaron saw the blonde woman's face, she froze. Sweat dripped down the woman's forehead, still catching her breath. But Aaron couldn't move. The world around her seemed to darken. Her heart pounded violently as one thought echoed in her mind on how is that possible. Aaron ran toward them just as the blonde woman turned away. A man suddenly rushed over and called out, "Dr. Kong, that is her flight is going to take off." Aaron stopped in her tracks. Her eyes widened when she heard the last name. Dr. Kong started walking upstairs, while Aaron stood there staring. Then she shook her head, forcing herself to calm down. "It's just a familiar face," she told herself. Jisoo weakly called Aaron's name. Aaron quickly turned and rushed to her side. She knelt beside Jisoo and asked how she had fallen. Jisoo answered softly that her wheels had slipped. From above the stairs, Dr. Kong looked back at them one last time. She turned away to her assistant and quietly told him to take the girls to the nearest hospital. Chapter 18. At the hospital, Jisoo Jae-won looked around the hospital room nervously, her eyes wide. She whispered that the hospital looked very expensive. Aaron calmly told her that the woman who saved her had already paid all the bills. Jisoo stuttered, shocked and deeply grateful at the same time. For a moment, she thought it had been Aaron who saved her. Aaron coldly said that she didn't know how to do CPR. Jisoo looked down sadly and quietly asked if Aaron would have saved her if she did know. Aaron froze, confused by the question. Jisoo hugged a pillow against her face and spoke shyly, saying that she somehow thought she and Aaron had kissed when she was unconscious. Aaron slowly turned her head to look at Jisoo. Without a word, Aaron threw the pillow and blanket onto the chair. Then she walked toward the bed and climbed onto it. Aaron positioned herself between Jisoo's thighs, their faces only inches apart. Jisoo's heart raced. She clenched her fists on the bed and nervously asked what Aaron was doing. Aaron leaned closer, teasing, and softly asked why Jisoo wanted to kiss her. Jisoo blushed deeply, sweat sliding down her cheek, and answered that Aaron already knew the reason. Aaron's expression suddenly turned serious. She told Jisoo that she was very straightforward and dared her to try it. Jisoo slowly closed her eyes and leaned in to kiss her. But Aaron hesitated. As Jisoo moved closer, Aaron slowly leaned back, fear flashing in her eyes. Jisoo pouting and blushing as she tried to kiss Aaron. Suddenly, Aaron gently pushed Jisoo's face away and said sharply that she didn't like her. She climbed off the bed and turned away. Jisoo asked where she was going. Aaron replied coldly that she would rather watch TV because Jisoo was boring. She froze when she heard Jisoo apologize behind her. Jisoo spoke softly, her voice shaking, saying that she liked Aaron very much and didn't know how to get closer to her. Aaron remained silent. Slowly, she looked down, smiling and let out a quiet sigh. Chapter 19. Inside Jisoo's room at the hospital. The TV was playing loudly. Aaron sat on a chair, watching it, while Jisoo sits on the bed, quietly staring at her. Without looking away, Aaron coldly told her to do something instead of staring. Jisoo smiled happily and said that everything felt unreal, that she had gone on a date and even had Aaron accompany her to the hospital. Aaron went silent for a moment, then told Jisoo not to misunderstand her. She said her conscience was just telling her to make it up to Jisoo for almost breaking her knee. Jisoo's voice grew sad as she replied that at least Aaron felt guilty and that she could have simply left her and gone home. Aaron suddenly asked if she was really that bad in everyone's eyes. Jisoo was confused for a moment, then smiled and answered that Aaron was not. And even if she was, Jisoo said she wouldn't mind. Aaron looked at her and said this wasn't a TV drama, telling her to stop saying silly things just to make her feel touched. Jisoo's eyes widened nervously, and she couldn't speak. Outside Kim Jisoo's room, a doctor stood in the hallway, reading Jisoo's medical chart. She noted that Jisoo was Dr. Kang's special patient. The doctor said that Jisoo's test results were all perfect except for her knee joint, which made it difficult for her to walk. She added that Jisoo could already be discharged. The man who had brought them to the hospital casually agreed. The doctor then mentioned that Dr. Kang had seen the girl drowning while taking a walk near the bridge by the airport. The man replied that Dr. Kang only wanted some fresh air and almost missed her flight to London. They both glanced toward Jisoo's room. The man sighed and said that Dr. Kang had always loved helping others. The doctor remained silent, unimpressed. At Jisoo's building, night, the day she's discharged. Jisoo thanked Aaron for everything she had done that day. Then she quietly revealed that it was her birthday. Aaron was a bit surprised and asked why she hadn't told her. Jisoo smiled and said there was no need. Aaron's presence was already enough. She happily said that she had never been this happy before and thanked Aaron again. But Aaron's face showed no emotion. She remained silent. Then, suddenly, she softly said, "Happy birthday." Jisoo froze, shocked, not knowing how to respond. After a moment, Jisoo told Aaron she should go first and wished her good night. Aaron turned away immediately. Jisoo watched her leave, thinking that Aaron was really just straight away, just as she said. She called out her goodbye, but Aaron didn't turn back. She didn't answer. Jisoo quietly asks herself whether they are still friends. Chapter 20. At school. A teacher greeted the class good morning and announced some news. He said that their homeroom teacher had taken a 1-month leave because of a family matter and that he would be their temporary teacher. The students immediately began whispering. One student said that women her age usually took leave because they were about to get married. Another laughed and said she was clumsy for saying that, as if Ms. Lee was getting married next week. Ji-hyun sat by the window, quietly staring outside, lost in thought. In the school field, Ji-hyun sat with Aaron and talked about how Yoonhee's father had arranged a blind date for her. She explained that the sudden break between them had nothing to do with it. Aaron asked why Yoonhee would go on a date with someone else if they were in a relationship. Ji-hyun tried to explain that it wasn't really a date and that Yoonhee's father was as strict as Aaron's mother, so she couldn't refuse. Aaron replied that she was still too young to interfere in those matters and admitted that she had felt helpless back then. Ji-hyun looked down and said she wanted to graduate quickly so she could finally stand beside Yoonhee as an equal. Aaron went silent, feeling a little hurt. Then she said that if she were Yoonhee, she would never date Ji-hyun. Ji-hyun looked at her, confused. Aaron's eyes filled with worry as she continued, saying that Ji-hyun already knew the truth, that their age gap was too big, and that no one would place their future in the hands of a kid 10 years younger. Ji-hyun lowered her head, unable to speak. Aaron sighed and said that Ji-hyun was starting to look uncertain. Before she could finish, Ji-hyun interrupted, saying that she didn't doubt Yoonhee. She looked up at the sky and told Aaron that she knew Yoonhee was hiding something, but that she was doing it for the sake of their relationship. Ji-hyun's eyes remained fixed on the sky, her thoughts spinning. She added that maybe she was waiting for Yoonhee to tell her the truth, or maybe Yoonhee would never say it. Aaron stared at her, confused, then gently asked if Ji-hyun had ever thought that maybe Yoonhee didn't love her in that way. Ji-hyun froze. The words hit her hard. She clenched her hands on her pants, unable to speak. Slowly, she looked down, her chest tightening, thinking if it wasn't love, then what was it? Ji-hyun's bedroom at night. Ji-hyun texted Yoonhee that she had just gotten home and asked what she was doing. Yoonhee replied that she was just visiting a neighbor. Ji-hyun asked if she was bothering her. Yoonhee answered that she wasn't and said she was outside getting some fresh air. Ji-hyun asked if her parents were putting pressure on her. Yoonhee replied that her dad had only asked if she had a boyfriend. Ji-hyun asked if they could video call. Yoonhee said it wasn't a good time and asked what was wrong, wondering why Ji-hyun suddenly wanted to call. Ji-hyun replied that nothing was wrong. Yoonhee answered, saying she understood, which left Ji-hyun confused. Then Yoonhee sent another message saying she got it. Ji-hyun must miss her. A moment later, she sent a photo. It showed Yoonhee standing on a beach, smiling, with a message saying how peaceful it was there. Ji-hyun stared at the picture, stunned. Her eyes slowly filled with suspicion. She had seen that exact photo before, on Yoonhee's laptop. Ji-hyun fell into deep thought, her heart sinking as one question echoed in her mind. Why is Yoonhee lying to her? Chapter 21. Jisoo sneezed loudly, pressing a tissue to her nose. Erin quickly raised her hand to block her face. Jisoo apologized, admitting that her fever had worsened after staying in the water for too long. She added that they could stop if Erin wanted to. Erin looked at her with worry and said Jisoo's physical condition was already bad. Jisoo brushed it off, saying it was because she didn't exercise much. She laughed weakly and added that it was a good thing their lessons were already over. Otherwise, she might have fainted while trying to warm herself up. On the table beside Jisoo sat her medicine and a glass of water. Erin noticed them and told her to take her meds, pointing out that they hadn't been touched since she arrived. Jisoo paused, then realized it herself and nodded. She picked up one pill, frowning slightly. She thought the medicine was awful and didn't want to take it, but she also didn't want Erin to think she was a loser. Holding up the glass, she drank it down. Erin watched her with a confused expression. Afterward, Jisoo asked what Erin had wanted to say earlier. Erin repeated herself, saying she hated Ji-hyun's girlfriend. Jisoo looked at her, confused. Erin continued, saying she didn't even want to remember that Yoonhee was almost 15 years older than Ji-hyun. She complained that Yoonhee was old and unattractive, with short brown hair, small eyes, and thick lips, saying she looked like a duck. Jisoo blinked, trying to imagine what she meant by that. Erin then said none of that mattered anymore. What really bothered her was Yoonhee's condescending attitude. She admitted she still couldn't bring herself to even look at Yoonhee, even if she weren't Ji-hyun's girlfriend. Her voice rose as she yelled that Yoonhee was getting on her nerves. She muttered that Yoonhee was taking advantage of Ji-hyun's kindness. Jisoo stared at her, shocked by the sudden rant. After a moment, she laughed. Erin turned to her coldly and asked what she was laughing at. Jisoo apologized and said she had just realized that Erin was cute when she was angry, like a kid whose candy had been taken away. Erin froze, staring at her. Jisoo slowly lifted her hand and placed it on Erin's head, rubbing her hair gently. Their faces were only inches apart. They stayed like that for a long moment, Jisoo continuing to stroke her hair. Jisoo felt her face heat up when she realized Erin wasn't pushing her away. Quietly, she asked if it was okay for her to comfort her like that. Erin was startled by the question. She stayed silent for a moment before saying that Jisoo looked like her mom when she smiled. Jisoo stiffened. The word mom hit her hard. She looked away, her expression breaking, thinking that Erin didn't understand what romance was. Erin watched her, disappointment settling in her eyes. Chapter 22. At Student Council Room. Ji-hyun finished washing her hands and slowly turned off the faucet. She lifted her head and stared at her reflection in the mirror, completely lost in thought. It had been 4 days since her last message with Yoonhee. Ji-hyun remembered how Yoonhee always found a reason to refuse her video calls. Her chest tightened as she asked herself what Yoonhee was trying to hide. A flashback crossed her mind. The photo Yoonhee had sent her. Ji-hyun whispered to herself that she was just waiting for Yoonhee to tell her everything. But another thought followed. If she talked to Yoonhee now, everything between them might become awkward. She realized that Yoonhee always became sensitive whenever she mentioned her past relationships or family matters. Ji-hyun let out a deep sigh. She told herself quietly that she should have known from the start. Suddenly, a voice called her from behind. Ji-hyun flinched. It was the student council president, curiously asking if she had already approved this week's article about their teacher, Ms. Lee. He added that it seemed the whole school now knew about Ms. Lee's relationship status. Ji-hyun slowly turned around. Her eyes widened in shock, furiously. A crowd of students gathered in front of the notice board, whispering excitedly as they read the article. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. As Ji-hyun walked toward the crowd, her heart pounded. She thought to herself that if the rumor was true, she would be deeply disappointed. As she passed by, some students whispered behind her back. They said she was Ms. Lee's favorite student and that Ji-hyun looked just as disappointed as them. Ji-hyun suddenly froze. Her breath caught in her throat. On the notice board was an article showing Yoonhee with a student. The article claimed that Yoonhee had been in a secret relationship for some time now and that she had recently been seen leaving a hotel with a young student. Ji-hyun couldn't move. Her mind went blank. Thinking what was Yoonhee doing in a hotel with a student? Another student whispered that in 3 more days, if they still stayed silent, the writer would expose everything about them. Something inside Ji-hyun snapped. Her vision darkened as anger rushed through her. Suddenly, she tore the article off the notice board. The students gasped. They had never seen Ji-hyun react like this before. Her hands trembled as she crumpled the paper tightly. She thought bitterly how ridiculous it was to publish such a crazy article without permission. Her eyes burned with fury, telling herself whoever wrote that must be better prepared. At classroom 2C, Jisoo entered the classroom while holding a sheet of paper. The room was filled with students talking loudly about the spreading rumor. Erin sat at her desk, holding the same article in her hand. She slowly read it again. Then, a small, satisfied smile appeared on her lips. Chapter 23. On the rooftop. Recess time. The wind brushed softly across the rooftop. Erin asked Ji-hyun why she had called her there. Ji-hyun avoided her eyes and quietly asked if she had already seen the article. Erin nodded and said she had, but it looked unreal. She added that if it was true, Ji-hyun should talk to Yoonhee about it. Ji-hyun looked down, her voice trembling as she admitted that she couldn't contact Yoonhee last night. Erin's eyes widened in shock. She said it sounded strange and suspicious, but before she could finish, Ji-hyun suddenly looked up, anger flashing in her eyes. She revealed that the boy in the photo was actually her. Erin froze. Ji-hyun explained that she had disguised herself so no one would discover their relationship. She went silent for a moment, then said that somehow, the person who wrote the article had gathered a lot of evidence against them. Erin asked nervously how Ji-hyun had figured it out. Ji-hyun answered calmly that one thing had bothered her, the word Yoonhee written at the end of the article. She said she wasn't sure if it referred to her or to Yoonhee. Erin's face turned pale. Her hands began to tremble. She asked what Ji-hyun was trying to say. Suddenly, Erin grabbed Ji-hyun's arms and forced her to turn and face her. Ji-hyun stayed silent. Erin's voice shook with anger as she asked if Ji-hyun was suspecting her. She clenched the fabric of her skirt tightly and demanded an answer. Before she could finish, Ji-hyun suddenly shouted. She told Erin fiercely that she was not suspecting her. In one quick movement, Ji-hyun pinned Erin against the wall. Both of Ji-hyun's hands pressed against the wall on either side of Erin. Breathing hard, she told Erin that she was her friend, her sister, and that she had never once doubted her in her entire life. She said she didn't care who was behind the mess. Erin looked at her, eyes filled with sadness and worry. Ji-hyun grabbed Erin's shoulders, her voice breaking as she shouted that if they didn't do something, everything would be exposed and Yoonhee would lose her job. She asked desperately if Erin had told anyone else, or if someone had been playing with her lately. Her eyes softened, filled with fear and pity. She begged Erin to tell her the truth. She said she needed confirmation from her first. Erin stared at her quietly. Something dark passed through her eyes. She realized that in the end, she was still the first person Ji-hyun thought of. Slowly, Erin let out a soft laugh. She gently removed Ji-hyun's hands from her shoulders and calmly asked, if it was her, what would she do? Ji-hyun stared at her, confused. Erin smiled. She said that she had always wanted to separate Ji-hyun from Yoonhee. Her smile widened as she confessed that she liked Ji-hyun. Again, she asked softly what Ji-hyun was going to do. Ji-hyun froze. Shock filled her face as Erin's confession finally sank in. Special chapter. At school. On their way to the library. Sunlight streamed in through as Jisoo and Erin walked side by side toward the library. Jisoo glanced around and laughed softly. She said that nobody in their right mind would come to the school library on a holiday. Erin replied that she should just think of it as a date. Jisoo hesitated for a second, then nodded and agreed. They continued walking together, their shoulders almost brushing. Suddenly, a figure stepped in front of them. A boy stood there nervously, holding a small pink card in both hands. He bowed slightly and extended the card toward Aaron. With a shaky voice, he confessed that he had liked her for a long time. Aaron's gaze immediately shifted to Jisoo. Jisoo leaned closer, surprised, and whispered that it had been a long time since someone had written Aaron a love letter. Jisoo swallowed hard and asked Aaron what she thought. Jisoo told her to answer quickly because he had gathered all his courage just to speak to her. Aaron hesitated. She looked down at the card, then back at the boy. After a moment, she said softly that everything was too sudden and that she needed time to think about it. Her eyes widened as she stared at Aaron, thinking that she must be teasing her. The boy smiled shyly and said that he would patiently wait for her answer. Jisoo picked up her drink and took a long gulp. The boy was about to ask Aaron out, when suddenly, Jisoo grabbed Aaron by the shoulder and pulled her close. Before anyone could react, Jisoo leaned in and kissed Aaron on the lips. The boy froze, shocked and hurt. Aaron didn't move. She stayed completely still as Jisoo's lips pressed against hers. After a moment, Aaron turned to the boy and calmly said that Jisoo was her girlfriend. Jisoo pulled back and smiled brightly, nodding happily. The boy stood there in silence, heartbroken. Chapter 24. Ji-hyun was looking at Aaron, and the world seemed to darken as their eyes locked. Ji-hyun spoke up, asking Aaron what she had just said. Aaron nervously tried to explain herself. Ji-hyun forced a smile and told Aaron that she was just joking. Aaron looked down and answered that whether it was a joke or not, it didn't matter. Ji-hyun looked at her, slightly furious, and said that it didn't matter, because it was about her. Aaron replied that yesterday it was their teacher, and the next second it was her. Ji-hyun's eyes widened as Aaron told her that she had a lot of trust issues, and that she should know herself better than anyone else. Aaron continued, saying that if Ji-hyun's beloved teacher got fired, then she was partly to blame because Ji-hyun herself had dragged her into this mess while she was still a student. Aaron added that Ji-hyun doubted everyone around her, even though she was the one who had started everything on the wrong foot. Ji-hyun stood there, stunned, as everything slowly sank in. Aaron told Ji-hyun that she didn't know how Ms. Lee managed to deal with someone as distrustful as her. And as for herself, Ji-hyun should not talk to her until she came to her senses. She said this angrily. Aaron then turned away and walked off, leaving Ji-hyun standing alone. 3 days later, Jisoo was walking down the hallway while tying her hair up. She wondered why Aaron hadn't come to her house for 3 days. She told herself that she could manage on her own now, but she was still unavailable to attend today's PE class. Strangely, Aaron had skipped class as well. Jisoo began to wonder what had happened to her. As she walked past the changing room, she noticed that the door was slightly open. Confused, she peeked inside, hoping Aaron was there. Aaron looked at her in shock, tears streaming down her face. Jisoo froze for a second, then immediately rushed toward her and asked what had happened. She kept asking why she was crying, her face full of worry. Aaron coldly told her that it was none of her business. Jisoo fell silent for a moment. Then she gently held Aaron's cheek and softly said that maybe it wasn't her business. Aaron looked stunned and confused as her tears continued to fall. Jisoo leaned closer and added that it hurt her whenever she saw Aaron cry. She carefully observed Aaron's face and said that her eyes were almost swollen. She asked if she was hurt anywhere. Aaron was about to respond, but Jisoo leaned in closer, her face only inches away, about to kiss her. Chapter 25. She gently held Aaron's head and closed her eyes. Instead of kissing her, Jisoo softly blew on Aaron's eyes. She was about to press a gentle kiss on Aaron's forehead, but Aaron suddenly asked what she was doing. Jisoo began to explain that blowing gently could help relieve the pain in her swollen eyes, but Aaron cut her off before she could finish. "Go relieve yourself," Aaron said furiously, pushing Jisoo away as she tried to explain. Aaron turned away as she told Jisoo not to come near her. Jisoo apologized. A few moments later, Jisoo nervously glanced at Aaron. She was so anxious because Aaron hadn't said a single word for 20 minutes. Aaron simply sat there, looking down, lost in deep thought. 2 hours ago, someone had messaged Aaron, telling her to meet at the abandoned house near the school if she wanted to know who her homeroom teacher truly was. Curious and uneasy, Erin went. As she approached the abandoned house, she heard voices inside. Inside the abandoned house, a woman dressed in black, wearing a cap low over her face, stood there with a creepy smile. She said it had been a long time and that she was glad. She was the first person Yoonhee saw after returning to the country. Yoonhee stood silently in front of her. Suddenly, Yoonhee raised her hand and slapped the woman hard. The force sent the cap flying off her head. The woman fell to the ground. Yoonhee's hand remained in the air. Her expression filled. She shouted at the woman, calling her a brat and reminding her that she had told her many times to stay out of her life. The woman tried to explain that she didn't know what Yoonhee was talking about. Yoonhee shouted again, asking how she dared to talk back. She leaned down, grabbed the woman by her shirt, her teeth clenched in anger. She said that the poorly written school article was enough evidence, and she had known from the start that it was her. The woman began smiling and giggling like she had lost her mind. She said she was glad Yoonhee still remembered her. Behind a steel beam, Erin stood silently listening. Yoonhee coldly told the woman that she didn't care about her feelings. If she continued interfering with her work, she would make sure her sister kicked her out of the country. The woman replied that Yoonhee wouldn't dare do that. Yoonhee demanded that she remove the article immediately because she didn't have time to play games. Yoonhee turned to leave. The woman suddenly grabbed her leg, begging her not to go. She said she didn't understand why Yoonhee had to protect her so much. Then, in anger, the woman accused Yoonhee of not loving her anymore. She said she was just a kid. If Yoonhee no longer loved her sister, then she should just date her instead. Yoonhee's expression darkened when she heard the woman said that she was disgusted. The woman laughed again, saying she had known Yoonhee for 9 years. She had seen everything Yoonhee sacrificed since she quit her dream job. She said it hurt her to see Yoonhee risk her future for such a young girl. Yoonhee looked down, falling into silence. The woman continued, saying she couldn't believe that someone as rational as Yoonhee would choose to start a relationship with her, out of all people. Erin leaned against the steel bar, her heart pounding as she listened carefully. The woman then begged Yoonhee to break up with her and promised she wouldn't expose her identity if she did. Yoonhee replied coldly that if the woman thought she could threaten her, she was wrong. The woman smiled slightly, triggered by Yoonhee's response. She said maybe Yoonhee should know that she had already figured out her weakness. She added that the real reason Yoonhee transferred to this school was because of Erin. Yoonhee froze in shock. Outside, Erin felt the world around her grow darker. Her eyes widened as she heard the woman say her name. Chapter 26. Erin was lost in deep thought but snapped back to reality when Jisoo asked if she was listening and if she had heard about Ms. Lee. Erin looked at Jisoo curiously and asked what she had heard about Yoonhee. Jisoo replied that it was about the rumor. She had only found out that morning, but fortunately, it was denied the very next minute. Erin quickly asked who denied it. Jisoo answered that it was the culprit. She explained that when PE class started, she was walking around and saw the principal heading toward the notice board with someone. When she turned to look at today's school paper, the culprit had already posted a statement confirming that the rumor had been playfully edited using 2 different photos. Jisoo said she felt relieved because she knew their homeroom teacher wasn't that kind of person. Erin's eyes slowly narrowed as she remained silent, realizing that this was not what she had overheard earlier that morning. At principal's office, the principal asked Yoonhee what she had just said. Yoonhee begged the principal to fire her. The principal frowned and asked for a reason, reminding her that she was proven innocent. He added that the issue would be forgotten in a few months, especially once final exams began. The professor standing beside him spoke up, saying it was difficult to find a transfer teacher as capable as Yoonhee. He added that her research paper was only halfway finished and that the principal had been looking forward to it. Yoonhee remained silent, staring out the window. After a moment, she politely bowed and apologized if her decision was disappointing. She said she would try to finish her research within the month and asked them to respect her choice. She added that she was afraid she might become a negative influence on the students and the school's reputation. The principal fell silent before finally saying he would give her 2 weeks to reconsider. The door slowly opened. Outside, The sound of students whispering about Yoon-hee filled the hallway. Yoon-hee walked out of the office quietly. Ji-hyun stood there, stunned and surprised when she saw her. Yoon-hee simply walked past Ji-hyun. For a brief second, Yoon-hee glanced at her. Ji-hyun's eyes filled with sadness. She continued walking away. Ji-hyun followed her with her eyes, confused about why she still looked so down even though the rumor had been denied. Ji-hyun was left standing there in silence. At Yoon-hee's apartment, Ji-hyun knocked loudly on Yoon-hee's door, reminding her that they had class that night. From inside, Yoon-hee shouted that she could come in. Ji-hyun stepped inside. The apartment was dark and felt empty. She softly called out Yoon-hee's name and asked why the lights weren't on. Before she could ask what was wrong, the lights suddenly flicked on. In the next second, Yoon-hee rushed toward her and pulled her into a tight hug. Yoon-hee buried her face into Ji-hyun's neck, holding her firmly. After a moment, Yoon-hee whispered that they needed to talk. Chapter 27. Ji-hyun shouted in shock when she found out someone had blackmailed Yoon-hee. Yoon-hee calmly replied that it was just an acquaintance and that everything was fine now. Ji-hyun worriedly asked why Yoon-hee still wanted to resign. Yoon-hee answered that it was because she wanted Ji-hyun to focus on herself. Ji-hyun nervously asked what she meant and anxiously wondered if she had done something to make Yoon-hee uncomfortable. Before she could finish, Yoon-hee told her to relax and stop being overly cautious. Yoon-hee added that she knew Ji-hyun cared about her, but sometimes it felt like Ji-hyun forgot that they were equals. They were sitting on Yoon-hee's bed. Yoon-hee then admitted that even if she told the truth and got fired, her life would still turn out fine. She said she could handle it and easily find another job. But Ji-hyun was different. Yoon-hee said Ji-hyun still had a long road ahead of her, and she didn't want her to get stuck in a relationship where both of them would eventually sink. Ji-hyun tried to respond but couldn't fully form her words. Yoon-hee calmly explained that this incident was a warning. If she stayed, something like this would happen again someday. She didn't want to ruin Ji-hyun's future. Ji-hyun anxiously asked about her dissertation and her job. Was she really giving everything up? Before she could finish, Yoon-hee gently cut her off and said she wasn't giving up. She just wanted to start over. Yoon-hee smiled brightly. Ji-hyun stared at her, still stunned and worried. Then Ji-hyun moved closer and hugged Yoon-hee tightly. The room filled with silence. She held her even tighter and promised that she would mature and protect Yoon-hee from now on. Yoon-hee smiled shyly, her cheeks slightly flushed. Flashback. Yoon-hee remembered the first time she saw Ji-hyun. They met at a bar. At that time, Yoon-hee thought Ji-hyun didn't look like someone she could rely on. She even wondered why it had to be her. She didn't know. Moments later, the memory shifted. The room felt warm. Ji-hyun was on top of Yoon-hee, about to kiss her. Ji-hyun held Yoon-hee's hand and pinned it gently to the bed. Yoon-hee's back arched slightly as Ji-hyun hovered above her, both of them breathing heavily. Next day, morning. Ji-hyun woke up and realized Yoon-hee wasn't beside her. Yoon-hee had left, convincing herself that what happened between them was a mistake. Ji-hyun sat alone in bed, staring at the empty space beside her, still feeling hurt. A few months later, Yoon-hee never expected to see Ji-hyun again. She was feeding stray cats by the roadside, her smile bright and peaceful. She thought to herself that maybe destiny loved playing with them. Ji-hyun suddenly spotted her. Her eyes lit up in shock. Yoon-hee wondered why they had met again, even as she pretended not to remember Ji-hyun. Another memory flashed. Ji-hyun pinning Yoon-hee gently against the library shelves. Yoon-hee had thought that even when the world began talking badly about her, letting Ji-hyun go felt far more complicated than she had imagined. End of flashback. Ji-hyun holding Yoon-hee's face while tears streamed down her cheeks, apologizing sincerely. A few moments later, Yoon-hee was still awake, deep in thought, watching Ji-hyun sleeping peacefully beside her. Slowly, Yoon-hee leaned in and kissed Ji-hyun's cheek. In her heart, she silently thanked her. Chapter 28. At counselor's office. Ji-hyun asked Aaron why she had suddenly come, since she thought Aaron was still mad at her. Aaron replied that she wasn't a child who couldn't handle a simple misunderstanding between rivals. She added that she didn't like Ji-hyun that way, and that what she said before was just a joke out of frustration. Ji-hyun answered that she already knew that. Erin looked away, placing her hands on her waist. Deep down, she still didn't want to talk to Ji-hyun, but this was more important. Her brows furrowed as she politely asked Ji-hyun to tell her everything about Yoonhee. Ji-hyun looked stunned and confused. Then she asked Erin if she liked Yoonhee. Erin suddenly grew furious and shouted that only someone crazy like Ji-hyun would fall for Yoonhee. Ji-hyun sat on the table and calmly asked why Erin suddenly wanted to know so much about her. Erin lied, saying she just wanted to make sure Yoonhee was good enough for Ji-hyun. Ji-hyun laughed lightly and said Yoonhee was good. She then asked what Erin wanted to know. Erin asked where Yoonhee's hometown was. Ji-hyun answered, slightly confused by the strange question, that Yoonhee was born in Korea and emigrated to England for some time. Erin then asked if she had met Yoonhee's parents. Ji-hyun replied that she hadn't, and that Yoonhee rarely talked about them. Erin asked if Yoonhee had any siblings. Ji-hyun said she was an only child. Their conversation continued for nearly an hour. A few moments later, Erin walked out of the office, lost in thought, unsure of who she should believe. She suddenly stopped when she saw Jisoo sitting alone on the stairs outside the building. Jisoo was quietly about to eat her sushi, but froze when Erin sat down beside her. Erin asked why she wasn't eating in the canteen with her friends. Jisoo replied that it was better to eat alone. Erin curiously asked why. Jisoo forced a smile and said she didn't know. Maybe people didn't want to sit with her because of her appearance or her intense personality. Erin remained silent, just watching her. Jisoo added that it was fine, because having Erin by her side now was more than enough. Erin looked straight ahead, still quiet. Then suddenly, she asked Jisoo what she had said the first time she approached her. She repeated the question, asking what the very first thing was that Jisoo had said. Jisoo's eyes widened in embarrassment, and her cheeks turned red. Erin stared directly into her eyes. Jisoo quickly looked away and said it had been a year, so she didn't remember anymore. Erin teasingly asked if she had really forgotten. Jisoo stuttered and nodded. Inside, Jisoo began overthinking. Was Erin about to reject her again? Had she said something wrong? Erin then threatened that she would leave if Jisoo didn't tell her. Overwhelmed, Jisoo repeatedly said that she would tell it. Erin smiled softly at her. Jisoo nervously stuttered that she really liked Erin and asked if she could give her a chance to be her girlfriend. She quickly took a sip of her drink, trying to brush off her nervousness. Erin smiled and simply said that she would. Jisoo's eyes widened in shock. Erin softly called Jisoo's name and asked her to be her girlfriend. Jisoo stared at her, frozen, as milk slowly spilled from the corner of her mouth. Chapter 29. Erin was lying on her bed, already regretting that she had asked Jisoo to be her girlfriend. Jisoo sat on the floor beside the bed and asked softly if Erin was feeling any better. Erin remained silent, just staring at her. She couldn't believe that even her mom had let Jisoo inside. Annoyed, Erin told her that she had said not to come. Jisoo replied that Erin had told her she was sick, so she got worried. "I'm fine now," Erin said coldly, "and that she can leave." Jisoo looked at her with puppy eyes, still clearly worried, and asked if she could stay a little longer because she had been so concerned. Erin cringed and told her to stop acting cute. She muttered that she shouldn't have told Jisoo where she lived. Jisoo's expression fell, and she apologized quietly for coming over without thinking. Blushing, Jisoo rested her head on the edge of Erin's bed and shyly asked if she was still dreaming because it felt unreal that Erin had allowed her into her home. Erin flatly replied that it was her mom who had let her in. Jisoo covered her face with her hands, blushing even harder. She nervously asked if Erin's mom accepted her and whether they could do girlfriend things there. Erin froze, speechless. She hadn't even thought about that. After a moment, Erin sat up and told Jisoo to come sit on the bed because she needed to remind her of something. Confused but obedient, Jisoo climbed onto the bed and sat close to her. Erin calmly explained that when she said they could be girlfriends, it meant she was giving Jisoo a chance. But in return, Jisoo had to follow some rules. Jisoo's face lit up with excitement. She promised she would do her best to be a good girlfriend. Erin looked down and sighed before beginning. The first Erin stated was no kissing. She repeated it firmly. Then she stated the second rule, which made Jisoo stiffen in surprise. Erin added a third rule, her tone completely serious. Jisoo looked so shocked that her eyes nearly filled with tears. Erin tilted her head and teasingly asked if it was really that hard. She giggled softly when Jisoo looked at her in disbelief. Then Erin reached forward and gently held the back of Jisoo's neck, pulling her slightly closer. She leaned in and softly whispered in Jisoo's ear that if she listened well, maybe things could change. Before Jisoo could respond, Erin lightly bit Jisoo's ear in a teasing gesture, her hand slowly sliding along Jisoo's shoulder. Erin pulled back just enough to murmur that good girlfriends might earn rewards, as she slowly brushed her tongue against Jisoo's ear. Chapter 30. She suddenly froze. For some reason, she had the strange urge to bite Jisoo. Her hand remained on Jisoo's shoulder as she looked away, thinking to herself that she only wanted to see Jisoo's reaction, just to test what would happen if she pretended to return her feelings. Jisoo's heart pounded loudly in her chest. Erin slowly turned back to look at her. Jisoo was so nervous that she began talking nonsense, her words stumbling over each other. She quickly covered her ears and looked away, mumbling that she shouldn't wash them anymore. Erin stared at her, stunned by how dramatic she was being. A few moments later, Jisoo slid off the bed and crouched on the floor, bending forward and stuttering to herself. She didn't know what to do. Her heart was racing so fast, and she couldn't believe Erin had actually done that. Erin stood up and walked toward the chair, telling herself that she should have kept her distance from Jisoo. She sat down, resting her chin on her hand, thinking that seeing someone lose control over a small impulse of hers wasn't that bad after all. Meanwhile, Jisoo kept whispering to herself, wondering if she was dreaming. Erin kept watching her before softly calling out her name. Jisoo slowly looked up. When she saw Erin's pretty face staring at her, she immediately started blushing again and covered her mouth in disbelief. Erin wondered how Jisoo could be so naive. She asked whether Jisoo only showed this foolish side to her, especially without her usual dramatic makeup. Jisoo instantly lit up and made a peace sign. She explained that, except for her uncle, Erin was the second person she could truly be herself around. Her uncle had once told her that if she only showed her bad side, people would never stay to look at her. Erin curiously asked who the first person was. Jisoo replied that it was her best friend from junior high, but they had suddenly lost contact. Erin felt a small spark of jealousy and quietly looked away. Suddenly, her phone vibrated loudly, giving her goosebumps. She slowly picked it up and read the message. Someone had texted her, telling her to come alone to a cafe. Erin frowned slightly, then looked back at Jisoo. She casually told her to come with her on Sunday. Jisoo's face immediately lit up, and she pointed at herself in surprise. Chapter 31. Jisoo's face lit up the moment she saw Erin coming. Erin, however, frowned. She didn't look happy to see her at all. Jisoo excitedly showed her the bike she had brought and proudly said she could take Erin anywhere she wanted to go. Erin replied coldly that she was not going. Jisoo froze, stunned by her answer. Without another word, Erin turned and began walking away. Jisoo quickly chased after her, asking what was wrong. She reminded Erin that she had asked her to come to the cafe together and questioned why she had suddenly changed her mind. Jisoo then asked to wait her, so she could take her bike. She hurried after Erin while holding onto her bike, asking where she was going. She suggested that if Erin didn't want to go to the cafe, they could go to the mall nearby instead. There would be lots of cafeterias and restaurants. Before she could finish, Erin stopped and turned around, clearly annoyed. She only remembers telling Jisoo to come. She glanced at the bike and scoffed, saying it was ridiculous for Jisoo to expect her to ride on such an uncomfortable back seat. Jisoo began to sweat, stunned by her words. Erin continued coldly that she didn't even like bikes. She would rather walk barefoot or stand in line for bus tickets than sit on that seat. Keep that in mind, she added. Jisoo lowered her head, upset. She apologized softly, saying she didn't know. She told Erin to wait for a moment so she could park the bike somewhere. Erin coldly told her that there was no need and that she would handle it herself. Then she told Jisoo to go home. Jisoo stuttered, worried, saying it wasn't safe for her to go far alone. "All thanks to you," Erin replied angrily as she raised her hand to call a taxi. Jisoo stood there, feeling guilty, thinking she had made Erin upset again. Suddenly, everything happened in an instant. A bus sped toward Erin. "Watch out," Jisoo screamed. Her bike fell to the ground as she rushed forward. Jisoo threw herself in front of her, using her body as a shield. "Don't leave me," Jisoo shouted desperately as she wrapped her arms tightly around Erin. The bus conductor stared at them in disbelief. For a moment, the world between them went completely silent. Then a taxi arrived. Erin sighed and walked over to speak with the driver. Behind her, Jisoo quickly picked up her fallen bike, telling herself she had to hurry if she wanted to catch up to Erin's taxi. She looked at Erin while getting back on her bike. Erin stayed silent for a few seconds. Then she suddenly said to Jisoo to get on. A few moments later, Erin and Jisoo were riding the bike together, crossing a bridge in quiet tension. Chapter 32. Erin and Jisoo had arrived at their destination. Erin gestured toward the cafe by the traffic lights and told Jisoo to stay put until she came out. "Why can't we go together?" Jisoo asked, curiosity evident in her voice. "It's not safe," Erin replied coldly. Jisoo froze at the word unsafe, then asked, "Why does she insist on going? Who is she meeting?" Erin's expression hardened. As she replied that she meeting a psychopath. And she not sure what she's going to do, so Jisoo needs to be smart and ready to act if something goes wrong. "I'll protect you," Jisoo said bravely. "You can count on me no matter what." Erin's mind flashed back to the abandoned building. She remembered the woman confronting Yoonhee. The woman had confronted Yoonhee, saying she already knew her weaknesses. The reason Yoonhee transferred to this school was because of Erin, she taunted. Yoonhee froze, her shock turning to fury. Erin's heart had skipped a beat when she heard the woman told Yoonhee that Erin was her beloved sister. The woman smirked and continued, her voice dripping with malice. Her fist gripped as she told Yoonhee that just like her, 10 years ago, she was so pretty. Then, she asked Yoonhee with a cruel grin, what should she do to Erin? Yoonhee went silent, horror rooting her in place. The woman leaned closer, whispering, "Go on, harm her, just like you did to me back then." Yoonhee's head turned away, but her eyes couldn't leave the woman. The threat lingered, chillingly clear. She would show Yoonhee exactly what hell meant. Present day. Erin arrived at the cafe and carefully pulled back the curtain. Inside, the woman lounged on a couch, smoking, her feet casually resting on the table. Her gaze locked on Erin, smirking. She asked Erin if she not scared of her as she teasingly called her Yoonhee's baby sister. Erin frowned, her jaw tightening, telling her to watch her mouth, and that she doesn't have any sisters. She glared, then demanded how rude she was, and asked her why did you want to meet Erin. She then added that she had heard some people spreading rumors about me. The woman's smile widened, as she told Erin that those aren't rumors. They're all true. Erin scoffed that anyone can say anything. The woman replied that the fact Erin wants to see her says that she has a major benefit for Erin now. Erin froze, confused, as a steel bar began slowly rolling down the cafe. The woman's smile turned eerie. "She doesn't do anything for free," she said, eyes glinting with malice. She added that she hopes that little swamp rat of Erin doesn't try to interrupt their precious time. Erin glanced away nervously, heart racing. Outside, Jisoo's eyes widened in worry as she noticed the steel bar moving toward unknown danger. Chapter 33. Erin glanced away nervously, heart racing. She told the woman she didn't care whether she was a cafe owner, a pathetic stalker, or an aggressive abuser. What bothered her, she said, were the inconsistencies. Yoonhee constantly tried to approach her. Somehow, this woman had her private number. And when Yoonhee's career had supposedly collapsed, she returned to work almost immediately, as if the issues had never existed. Erin frowned and stated firmly that she did not believe in their ridiculous games. The woman studied her carefully. For a moment, disbelief passed over her face. Then she laughed, slow, teasing, entertained. She said it was understandable. It was natural not to believe a stranger. Reaching into her pocket, The woman pulled out a photo. She explained that telling Aaron everything would be too risky if Yoonhee discovered it. But for someone intelligent like Aaron, she claimed, the picture alone should be enough. The woman smiled and replied that she had no time to invent lies. She gently placed the photos on the table and told Aaron to look at it, to look at something far beyond imagination. Aaron remained still, refusing to show interest, until she saw it. Her composure fractured. Her breathing faltered. The woman began her story. 8 years ago, she said, a heartless unmarried couple had caused an accident that nearly killed Yoonhee. The women immediately rejected it. The woman's voice rose. It was not an accident, she declared. Aaron's biological parents had deliberately crashed into Yoonhee. Shock widened Aaron's eyes. She instinctively reached for the photograph, but her hand stopped midway when the woman continued speaking. She claimed it had all been done so Aaron could live comfortably. The cafe felt suffocating. The woman then described the day Yoonhee awoke from a 10-month coma. She asked Aaron to imagine the first words Yoonhee had spoken. According to her, Yoonhee had said she wanted to see Aaron lying there, covered in tubes, ventilators, and bandages. Aaron did not speak. The woman went on, saying Yoonhee had slowly changed after that, becoming someone unrecognizable. She stopped talking about Aaron entirely. And if not for Yoonhee's so-called kindness, Aaron would not be living in luxury. Anger finally broke through. Aaron called the woman a psycho and demanded to know if she even understood the gravity of what she was saying. The woman stood up. Her laughter filled the enclosed cafe, echoing against steel and glass. She seemed almost delighted by the accusation. Slowly, she moved behind about as she pulled out a towel. Without warning, she grabbed Aaron's head and pressed a towel tightly over her mouth. The movement was swift, practiced. Aaron struggled immediately. The woman leaned close, her voice soft and intimate, almost affectionate. Unfortunately, she whispered, no one would save her from this psycho. Thanks for listening to GL Stories. We love hearing from you. Drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of today's story. Your feedback helps us create even better content. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to turn on notifications so you're the first to catch our new episodes. See you in our next stories.